Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, well, I'm the owner of Hans Hoagie's house right around the corner on J Street. You know, folk come in there all the time thinking I only specialize in subs, and while I do make a mean po' boy, I mean, the real treat is in my peach cobbler, my apple pie, my sweet tea. You ought to stop by.
How long have you been running that restaurant?
I've been running the place for almost 25 years, but it's been in the Dillinger family for almost 70. 70 years or so right here in Midland.
Ma'am, do you have any typical hours of operation?
Now, I open the place at 11, close it down at 8. I'm open 363 days of the year, excluding the 2 most important holidays, that being Thanksgiving, because folks ought to be home with their families, and my birthday, because, well, I ought to be home.
Miss Patty, were you working those same hours in the month of October of 2017?
I was.
All right, I want to talk about a few days that month, starting with October 31st. Do you know anything about the robbery that happened at Third National Bank that day?
I sure do. I watched it all unfold with my 4 eyes.
Well, I'd like to see if you can help us figure out who was involved. May I approach the witness with exhibits 10 and 3 that have already been entered into evidence?
Once you display them to opposing counsel, yes.
Of course, Your Honor. That's good. May I approach now?
You may.
Thank you. Handing Miss Patty those exhibits, and we'll start with the top one, exhibit 10. Ma'am, do you recognize the woman in that photo?
I do.
How?
This right here is Dorothy, or at least that's what she told me. She will come into the diner and order the special.
And moving on to the woman in that second photo. Do you recognize her?
I do.
How?
This is a sidekick, or at least that's what I called her, because every time I saw her, well, I saw Miss Dorothy.
And ma'am, if I say the name Charlie Floyd, does that sound at all familiar to you?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
How?
Well, I know Floyd from the robbery in the day of the parking lot. That's when I saw her with these 2.
Alrighty, then I want to break down for the jury exactly what you saw that day. So what was the first thing you saw out in the parking lot?
All right, so it's Halloween day, so I'm in the diner early making bread, and well, I happen to glance into the parking lot and I see a car pull up.
Did you see who was in that car?
Now hops Charlie Floyd.
And what was Miss Floyd doing?
Well, she had a mask in one hand, and well, she took the mask and put it on over her face like that. But at that point, I didn't think much of it because it was Halloween, and you know how these young folk get with these masks and these costumes.
All right, what was the next thing you saw?
The next thing I see is another car pull up.
And who was in that one, if you could tell?
It was the sidekick and Miss Dorothy.
And what did they do?
Well, sidekick hops out the passenger, and well, she had a mask in one hand and a gun in the other.
And what did you do at that point?
Well, at that point, I knew that they was all too old to be out there trick-or-treating, so I called up the police to tell them everything that I was seeing.
Miss Patty, I want to see if you can help us figure out if anyone else could have been involved that day. Do you know Cassidy Sutton?
I do.
How?
The manager of the Third National Bank of Midlands and a regular at the diner.
Did Mr. Sutton come into your restaurant on the evening of October 30th, right before that robbery?
As a matter of fact, he did.
What happened?
Well, he came in there, ordered his usual, and well, I brought it over to him, and he was just sitting there.
Did the two of you talk at all?
Well, yeah, I tried to strike up a bit of conversation, but it wasn't before long that Mr. Sutton was talking my head off.
And what was he talking about?
No, he was going on and on about how he was going to have a day off.
Did he mention when he would have the day off?
It was going to be the next day, October 31st.
And did Mr. Sutton tell you why he was going to be taking the day off?
He said he was just going to be doing some relaxing, you know, put his feet up.
Miss Patty, have you ever seen Mr. Sutton with those 2 women we talked about before, Dorothy and her sidekick, as you call her?
And I have.
When?
Now that was a Tuesday, October 24th, just 1 week before the robbery, and I remember good because I played my numbers that day, 999, and I hit big.
Ma'am, what happened when you saw those women with Mr. Sutton?
Well, Miss Dorothy walked in and she ordered 2 po' boys to go, extra slaw, so I had that up lickety-split. But Miss Dorothy sort of lingered around a bit.
Until when?
Until Mr. Sutton walked in.
And what did Mr. Sutton do?
Now, Mr. Sutton, he ordered a gluten-free dish, so that take a bit while longer.
And what happened after Mr. Sutton's food was ready?
You know, as soon as Mr. Sutton's food was ready, then, well, Miss Dorothy hopped on up and they walked on out together.
Did you see if they spoke at all?
Yeah, well, they went on outside the door and they were standing real close, you know, close proximity, and they was conversing, it looked like.
Did you see anything else?
Well, yeah, it looked like Miss Dorothy handed something on to Mr. Sutton.
Miss Patty, have you ever seen Mr. Barrow with either of those 2 women?
Nah, Miss Patty got eyes all around the diner, and, well, I ain't never seen that.
Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good evening, Miss Patty.
Good evening to you.
I'd like to talk about what was happening at 6:05 p.m. just one day before the robbery.
All right.
Ma'am, on October 30th, you were inside of your store, right?
I was inside the diner, me, myself, and I.
And at 5:30 p.m., Cassidy Sutton entered your store, right?
That's right.
Ma'am, you'd agree with me that Cassidy Sutton was there until 6:15 p.m., right?
That's correct.
And you're certain about that, right?
That's right. I was watching him stuff his mouth with a po' boy.
And so, Ms. Dillinger, I just want to clarify, at 6:05 p.m., Cassidy Sutton wasn't in Third National Bank, right?
That's right. He was sitting in the diner.
Exactly. Now, Ms. Dillinger, I also want to talk about what was happening just 1 week before the robbery.
All right.
You actually mentioned on direct examination that you saw Cassidy Sutton in your store again, right?
In the diner, right.
And this time it was around 6 p.m.
That's
right?
correct.
You also saw the woman in Exhibit 10 inside of your store, right?
Miss Dorothy.
And you mentioned on direct examination that you saw the 2 individuals leave your store together, right?
Right, walked on out.
But ma'am, the truth is, you actually just saw them leave at the same time, right?
Same time and together. That's right.
Ma'am, at this point, they were outside in the parking lot, right?
That's correct.
And you mentioned on direct examination that you might have seen the 2 individuals chatting, right?
That's correct.
Ma'am, you don't know why they were chatting, right?
No, I don't.
You don't know if they had previously planned to meet, right?
That's right.
Ma'am, you don't even know what they were talking about, right?
Yeah, I don't got a clue.
Now, Miss Dillinger, I want to bring your attention to the day of the robbery.
All right.
On the morning of October 31st, you thought you were witnessing a bank robbery, right?
That's right. That's what it looked like.
So you called 911, right?
Called them up as quick as I could.
And the police came, right?
That's correct.
Well, Miss Dillinger, about an hour after the police left the scene, the defendant, Parker Barrow, actually walked into your store, right?
That's correct.
Now, Miss Patty, you knew that Third National Bank had just been robbed, right?
That's what I had saw on the news, right.
And when the defendant walked into your store, he actually seemed composed, right?
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm not saying that the defendant was composed. I'm saying that this was a rationally based perception upon which Miss Dillinger saw the defendant seem composed when he walked into the store.
Anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. Counsel needs to lay foundation that Miss Patty would know whether Mr. Barrow was or was not composed. Without that foundation, we can't hear this testimony.
Objection overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Miss Patty, I just want to clarify, an hour after the robbery, when the defendant walked into your store, he seemed composed, right?
That's what it looked like to me. That's why I had him a piece of a cake slice to try to make him feel better, but you know, everybody handle things differently.
Ma'am, I just want to redirect you back to my question. Yes, he seemed composed, right?
That's what it looked like to me.
So you actually asked the defendant if he was okay, right?
That's right. I was trying to make sure the boy was all right.
The defendant said, "I'm fine," right?
Correct.
And then he actually said, "I can't believe the robbery happened that way," right?
Can't believe the robbery happened like that. That's right.
It was that way, right?
That's correct.
Miss Patty, he didn't say, "I can't believe a robbery happened," did he?
No, he said, "I can't believe the robbery happened like that."
Miss Patty, he didn't say, "I can't believe Third National Bank was just robbed," right?
No, he didn't say that.
Then, Miss Patty, he actually asked you a question, right?
That's right.
He asked you, "Are you the one who called the police?"
That's right, because I had.
Miss Patty, he didn't say, "I tripped a silent alarm and also called the police," right?
Well, he was on his way out the door, so no, he didn't say nothing about no silent alarm.
So he didn't say anything about that, right?
No.
He also didn't say, "I also called the police," right?
Well, Missy was on his way out the door.
Exactly, and after you told him that you were the one who called the police, he never thanked you for calling them, right?
I didn't need...
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance to whether Mr. Barrow thanked Miss Patty for calling the police. It doesn't tend to make any fact in today's case more or less likely under Rule 401.
Response.
Your Honor, the reason why I asked Miss Patty whether or not the defendant asked her if she was the individual who called the police was that the defendant actually wasn't the individual who had called the cops. The fact that the defendant didn't thank Miss Patty for calling the police goes to show that the defendant didn't want anyone to call the police after the robbery.
Anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. Counsel cannot make that nexus. She cannot ask the jury to assume or whatever nexus she's trying to make that just because Mr. Barrow didn't say thank you, that must have meant he didn't want someone to call the police. This is irrelevant because counsel cannot make that nexus.
Objection overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Patty, I just want to clarify, the defendant never thanked you for calling the police, did he?
No, he didn't thank me, but Miss Patty ain't need no congratulations. I was doing my duty.
Thank you for doing your duty, Miss Patty. So that's a no, right? He never thanked you.
He didn't get the chance to, no.
Instead, he just walked out of your store, right?
Right, he was on his way out the diner.
Thank you, Miss Patty. I have nothing further.
Thank you, counsel. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Patty, counsel was asking you about when Mr. Barrow came to your store on the 31st after that robbery. Did you see if he had a red envelope with him?
No, he didn't have no red envelope.
Thank you, ma'am. Nothing further.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
The witness may step down. Is the defense ready to call its next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Excuse me. Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Karpus. And while Dr. Karpus takes the stand, may I set up the well for use of a chart?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, may I reposition myself just so that I may see the chart when it's being used?
Yes, you can position yourself anywhere so you can see everything you need to.
Sounds great, Your Honor.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good evening. Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Harper Karpus, Doctor of Criminology.
Dr. Karpus, what do you do?
I'm a professor. I teach classes in practical criminology.
What's that? Practical criminology?
It's a focus on real-life experience, teaching our students skills that they can't get from the textbook. We teach them how to analyze a robbery from the perspective of a criminal mind.
But Dr. Karpus, how can you do that?
I used to be a criminal. 25 years ago, I was part of 17 of the biggest bank robberies this country's ever seen. until we got caught.
And how'd that happen?
When the muscle of the operation deliberately disobeys orders to engage an insider, the whole ring got caught. I was given an option. Either go to prison or work for the FBI.
So what'd you choose?
Signed a contract with the FBI. For just about 8 years, it was my job to help them analyze crime. Basically, I was helping them catch criminals like myself.
Do you still work over at the FBI?
I don't. After that 8-year stint, I was actually recruited to work for the private sector. Just as software companies hire hackers to make sure their computers are safe, I was hired by 6 national banks. I made sure that their security systems were safe against robbers, safe against people who could think like me.
Dr. Karpus, you also mentioned that you're a doctor of criminology, so what kind of education do you have?
I have a PhD in criminology. I also serve as the vice president of the National Board of Criminologists, where we train individuals on how to analyze robberies, just like this one.
Well, Dr. Karpus, let's shift our attention to...
Where's the Hamlin representative, please? All right.
Should I continue, Your Honor?
Let's wait just a second.
Certainly.
Get our wits about us again. All right, why don't you pick up with the question you thought you were starting with when the alarm went off?
I think I can remember. Thank you, Your Honor. Well, Dr. Karpus, let's now shift our attention to this case. What were you called to do?
I was performing an investigative analysis, part of that crime reconstruction field. Basically, I look at what the FBI agent did and compare that to best practices in the field of criminology.
Dr. Karpus, have you testified utilizing this investigative analysis as an expert witness in trials before this one?
Certainly. I testified not only with the FBI, but also as an independent expert as well.
And did you have enough facts and data in today's case to utilize your investigative analysis to come to opinions?
I did. As it was a type of audit, I looked at the documentation of the investigation. Basically, the report of Agent James and any available statement of an insider suspect. So Cassidy Sutton's statement as well.
Well, Dr. Karpus, let's jump into your analysis then. Where'd you start?
My main issue was with that suspect analysis, analyzing who was involved. I brought along a chart so we can walk through.
Your Honor, may the witness step down and make use of her chart?
She may.
Thank you. Dr. Karpus, what are we looking at here?
Well, right now we're not looking at anything. But I'll walk through that suspect analysis so we can see where the government might have gotten it wrong.
Walk us through that.
I started at looking at what the government determined. The FBI agent only considered 2 possible individuals as this insider suspect. So the investigation was narrow from the start. So we'll look at those 2 individuals first.
And who were those 2 individuals?
Cassidy Sutton, a bank manager, and Parker Barrow. So I'll place those names on the top half of this chart.
Dr. Karpus, based on your experience with the FBI, how are you supposed to go about analyzing suspects?
Well, there are 3 basic questions we have to answer. What are the means, motive, and opportunity of any suspect to commit a crime? In this case, in the case of bank robbery, frankly, motive was inconclusive. You see, the FBI agent never got financial statements for either one of these individuals. So we can't determine motive. So I was only looking at means and opportunity.
And what'd you find regarding means and opportunity?
It boiled down to access. You see, one of the cameras was manipulated the day before the robbery. It was moved to face the ceiling. So we need to ask, who could have accessed the bank to move that camera? Who had a key?
Dr. Karpus, did you find that Cassidy Sutton had a key?
I did. Mr. Sutton is not only the bank manager, but actually in charge of the security for the bank. So Mr. Sutton did have a key. So I'll place that key above his name to indicate that access.
What about Parker Barrow?
Parker also had a key. In fact, Cassidy Sutton was the one who gave Parker that key, so I'll place a key above Parker Barrow's name to indicate that access.
Now, Dr. Carpus, looking at your chart right now, isn't this exactly what Agent James also found in her investigation?
You're right. This is all Agent James found about these insiders and that type of access. He failed to answer that next obvious question. Who else had keys to this bank?
Dr. Carpus, did you find evidence that anyone else actually had a key?
Well, first I was looking at the type of security system this was. Based on my experience, old-fashioned metal keys are a very primitive security system. They're not a retinal scanner. There are no key cards that indicate when people leave and enter the bank. It's just an old-fashioned metal key. And like you know, keys can be copied. So I was looking at if there were any copies of the key in this case.
Did you find that there were any copies?
I did. Cassidy Sutton revealed that there were at least 2 other groups that had a key to the bank.
Who are those 2 groups?
Both the security company and the cleaning crew had that type of access. So I'll place those names at the bottom of the chart, as well as 2 keys to indicate the access.
Now, Dr. Carpus, we're talking about a security company and a cleaning crew. What's the big deal?
Well, security companies and cleaning crews are some of the easiest groups to infiltrate for robberies. So we need to look at these 2.
Excuse me, lacks foundation.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Carpus has already testified that she was actually a bank robber herself. She would have firsthand knowledge about infiltration of banks. Second, she's also testified that she's worked on over 70 cases with the FBI regarding robbery. The foundation has been laid.
Response,
Is that
Your
enough?
Honor?
Yes.
The witness just testified that security companies and cleaning crews are the most easy groups to infiltrate to be insiders. We haven't heard any foundation that's actually the case for any robberies, or specifically this one. So we ask that foundation be laid now.
If I may?
Yes.
Your Honor, that's a matter of weight, not admissibility. The foundation is there that this expert has the knowledge to testify to that. Counsel can go into that on cross-examination.
Objection overruled.
Dr. Carpus, could you finish your answer?
Absolutely. These 2 types of groups need to be investigated as possible insider suspects. But in this case, we don't know how many copies of the key each one of these groups made. We don't even know how many people are part of this security company or cleaning crew. And we can't rule out that this Jane Doe, this mastermind, had infiltrated either one of these groups. And we don't know that because the FBI never even considered them as possible insider suspects.
Thank you, Dr. Carpus. We have nothing further. You can
Thank
take
you,
your seat again,
counsel.
ma'am. And Your Honor, would you like for me to take down the chart?
Would counsel like the chart to remain up, or should counsel take it down?
You can leave it up if that's all right. Thank
Certainly.
you.
Proceed when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Doctor. Doctor, you know that 2 security systems were circumvented in this robbery, right?
I'm not sure what you mean.
You know that the security camera was moved, right?
I do.
And you know that the silent alarm wasn't activated, right?
I'm not sure about that.
But you know that the silent alarm was manipulated in some way, yes or no?
I'm not sure.
Well, Doctor, I want to talk about both of those devices. You examined the security footage from that security camera, right?
I did watch it, yes.
You saw footage from October 30th, the day before the robbery,
That's right.
as well as October 31st, the day of the robbery.
I did.
I want to talk about what the footage on October 30th would show you, all right? You know from looking at that footage that the camera was moved to face the ceiling at 6:05 p.m., right?
That's right.
You saw Cassidy Sutton walk out of the front entrance of that bank at 5:30 p.m., right?
I did see that, yes.
So you agree that you saw Cassidy Sutton leave the front entrance of the bank over half an hour before the camera was moved, yes or no?
That's true, and that's part of the problem. That security camera only looked at that lobby. so I couldn't see the other entrance to the bank, that employee entrance. So I can't tell you if anyone else entered through that employee entrance. It wasn't covered by that security.
Doctor, I'm not asking about the other entrance. I'm asking about what you saw in the footage. And you agree with me that you never saw Cassidy Sutton reappear on the footage after he left at 5:30. Yes or no?
I didn't, and like I was saying, that's a problem because we only saw one of the entrances on that security.
But you know that the last person you saw in the footage was the defendant, right?
That's true.
You saw the defendant for the last time on the footage at 5:50, right?
That's right.
That's just 15 minutes before the camera was moved.
15 minutes before, yes.
And so the last person you saw on the footage before the camera was moved was the defendant.
Objection.
Yes?
Asked and answered, Your Honor. Counsel's been over this point up to 3 times now.
Response?
Yes.
I haven't asked this specific question. I asked her whether the last person she saw on the footage was the defendant. Now I'm asking her